Hello and welcome to the Film School Chronicle, your wire right to the heart of the student film scene of Brisbane, Australia. I'm your host, Bryce Quinn, and joined today by Carmelo Keating, my co-host, and Ryan Greaves. I don't really have a title for you, actually, sorry.
Sure, like producer, screenwriter.
Yeah, writer, producer.
Happy to be here.
And yeah, that's what we're going to be talking about today, but I'll just quickly address a couple of things. So one, I'm out of practice because it's been a week since we put out an episode. We didn't announce that we weren't putting out an episode, so sorry about that. We've been a bit busy and a bit burnt out. We talked a couple of weeks ago about our episodic content, everything we're making, so that's our excuse / justification. Yep. But just for today, we'll just jump back into it, and I'll jump to you, Ryan.
Yeah.
How is it working with Ron Howard?
Look, it's been a wild experience, like especially coming. We did it all through COVID, so it was all over Zoom. And chatting with Ron Howard and the team at Impact over in the US, in LA, has been a wild experience and kind of surreal. Like sometimes you wake up, is this a dream when it's just over Zoom?
Yeah. No,
So it's been a joy.
Yeah, so obviously just to take it right to the point there. So yeah, you are working with Ron Howard. You, just to cover a couple of things. So you went through film school at Griffith University.
Yep.
And then have gone into the industry to work with Netflix and Ron Howard. And that's what we were talking about where we met in some workshops we had where I was learning producing stuff. Like the bare basics of producing things. Yeah. So we'll just go, I think right to the start. So you went to film school at Griffith University. You did the 3-year course that we're doing right now.
Yep, that's correct.
And hopefully that helped you get into the industry and taught you at least a couple things. Yeah,
definitely. Like I graduated in 2014 from Griffith Film School. Like you said, it's a 3-year course of just kind of, it's a really hands-on course, which is what I like about it compared to other universities. Not slandering them, but Griffith is like they put the camera and gear in your hands within the first year,
right.
And then you got to kind of sink or swim and learn on set how to make a short film.
That's exactly how it is, yeah.
And the trials and tribulations, like at the time, feel really tough, but they really make you into a better filmmaker. So I think it's a really worthwhile 3 years, especially from the friendships and connections you make. Like I think that's the biggest takeaway I have is forming like bonds with directors and writers and production designers and DOPs that I now work with in the industry like 8, 9, 10 years later. So it's that's kind of the key I find from film school. It's the constant question I get is, should you go to film school? And my big answer is always yes. But it's always because of the people you meet there. And you never know who's going to kind of sail off into the sunset of Hollywood or like being a big hit, especially DOPs. Like they're the ones you want to make friends with as directors and producers.
Yes.
Just looking to our cameraman.
Just a big tick of approval. So I graduated there, and because I kind of focused my degree on making kind of like content for younger audiences, so like ages 8 to 12, there was a new production company being set up called Like a Photon Creative, and within a year within 6 months out of film school, I got a job with them as their first employee. And that company's grown to like 50 to 60 employees now at the height of, they're making an animated feature film. We just finished them, and that's kind of the trajectory I've had over the past 5 years with them.
Right. Okay. So that would have been animation students, right?
Yeah.
So we know about animation and games because they're the two courses that run kind of concurrent to film. And we're going into a course now that will hopefully bring us closer together with them and get to work on stuff. Is that possibly where you met some of those?
Yeah, so hilariously, like I never intended to get into animation. I've been a huge Pixar fan for many years. One of my favorite films ever is Toy Story. But I never intended to get into animation. It seemed too techy, seemed too nerdy, to be honest. But then the producers who were working at Like a Photon said, we're kind of going into the niche of animation. That's where a lot of funding is. That's where a lot of distributors are putting money into. So let's make some animated content, which we made a Disney Junior series called Balloon Barnyard. And then we made, we struck a deal with Universal to make 3 animated feature films. And that's kind of where I had to crew up like a 60-person studio in the space of a couple of months.
Right.
And met a lot of animators, asset artists, storyboard artists, and realized like these really are like some of the most incredible creatives you ever get to work with. And it's just like working on a film set in live action, really. It's just collaborating with genius people to hopefully make a good end result.
Yeah. So without jumping too far away from the film school bit, are you able to talk about the projects you're making for Universal?
Yeah, so we've just finished the 3 animated feature films, so that's all done. It started in 2017, wrapped up at the end of 2020. So we finished the 3rd film actually all through COVID, so we're all working from home remotely, just doing like 60-person Zoom screens trying to communicate across that.
Just quickly, if you could drop the names of those three.
Yeah. So the three animated features are The Wishmas Tree, which came out start of 2020, just before the pandemic hit.
Right.
Combat Wombat, which came out at the end of last year, and then Daisy Crocker, World's Scariest Animal, which I got to work with Sam Neill and Gary Rice, who's just in the Mayor of Easttown series, if you've seen that. She's Kate Winslet's daughter. Right. So we actually flew over to Philadelphia and went to the set of Mayor of Easttown and saw her and recorded with her for that voice for that film there.
On set of Mayor of Easttown? Yeah. Is that where you got the voice recording?
Well, we met her on the set of Mayor of Easttown, and then the next day took her to the sound studio to record for 3 days.
Wow. And that was this year?
That was a beginning of 2020.
Beginning of 2020.
Yeah,
okay, so
that's had a really troubled shoot. It was shooting beginning of 2020, and then they just finished the reshoots like beginning of this year.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. But I sidetracked for a second.
No worries.
Back to it.
Daisy Crocker came out in February this year. Went straight to PVOD because of cinemas still being stressed about COVID. But we're actually coming out in the UK and US in July now that cinemas are opening. So we're really excited to see the reaction to the film there.
Right. So we had a couple of lessons together where you gave some very specific examples for film school stuff, and you said you put all this money into some special effects for a sci-fi film, and that was during your third year and what we call grad slate, which is our big third year production we have. And I was just hoping we could go over that story again for the recording, if that's okay.
I think, for me, film school at Griffith is you're working all the way to make your graduate film the best thing possible. So you're working to third year being this is my magnum opus, this is my masterpiece. And I was directing that short film, so I was so into wanting this to be the most perfect short film ever that's going to jettison me to Hollywood.
Yeah.
So I kind of became a bit obsessive about some details. It was a sci-fi. It was it was meant to be The Road meets Stranger Things kind of vibe. And I put so much money into production design that ended up being on screen for 5 seconds compared to focusing on other areas of the budget I should have spent. So as I mentioned in the tutorials, the key thing I always say to students, and is this from my failings and learnings, is you really have to assess, especially as a producer and director, where you're spending your money and putting that money on screen. So the longer that is on screen, the more value for money that is. So the two big things there are cast and location. So that's where you should be spending your money. They're what take up the majority of the frame and what you're banking the majority of the success of your film on.
Yeah.
So, care about your cast, care about your locations, and don't care about a little egg that cost $1,000 and spewed slime and was on screen for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That's a big tip. I highly recommend that.
Yeah, just coming out of our production where we had a monster costume, we were told many times, don't make a monster film in second year of university with a $1,000 budget.
Who said that?
I think our tutor, her first name is Catherine.
Did I choose to forget that memory?
Maybe, just selectively forgot it.
No.
And we had two episodes of The Horror had monster costumes. And I think they both look pretty great.
How did the costume turn out? Pretty good?
Yeah, no, we were super happy with it, yeah.
For the budget we had, and
just a bunch of foam on a morph suit to make it look like Rocky. And, but it's really good, and hopefully the end product is something we can show off soon to our audience and to the rest of our cohort.
I'm looking forward to seeing it too.
If we can find a way to get it to you. Yeah. But to go from things like that, we were dealing with $1,000 budgets, or even I think maybe a $7,000 budget for grad slate.
Yeah, so our budget. So I did 2 films. I directed one and produced one.
Yeah.
I think.
Wait, you did what?
So I directed one. I produced one with a co-producer.
Okay.
Right. So it was 2 producers working on that, and that budget was $8,000 for the one I produced, and it was $14,000 for the one that I directed, which it was actually not the most expensive. There was one that was about $17,000, which was bananas.
That's insane. Yeah.
They did a whole period piece set in the 80s, with lots of different vehicles and picket fence signs and stuff like that. So it was an expensive short.
Yeah.
And again, probably didn't pay off on screen,
Yeah, you put $17,000 into something that's 7-8 minutes long.
Especially as a director, you're this is my vision, this is fine. But when your DOP or prod designer are putting in $2,000 each, it's not really worthwhile for them.
But then you take that experience, and so you said you threw in your lot with animation, like people who wanted to go into animation, and then you progress that, I guess, career journey over the next like 5 years or so. How has that transition from animation into working with Netflix?
Yeah, so I've been working at Like a Photon for the past 6 years or so, just as a head of development and then as a senior producer there.
Right.
And then outside of that, it was a crazy story. Like Imagine Impact are like an incubator program that's run by Ron Howard's company Imagine, and they pretty much do call outs all the time. And there was one call out which was like pitch us an like a family action adventure feature film for Netflix on a large scale. So they want it to be a budget between 100 to 150 million, that scale. And I sent in this gigantic application. It was about 5-6 pages, and also at the bottom of that application was, if you have any other synopses, send it through here. So then I got a call like maybe a month later being like, hey, you've shortlisted you for this application, but we don't want to talk about the project you submitted with. We want to talk about this one synopsis on the bottom of the thing, which was, I actually can't discuss it.
Okay, all right, cool.
But the film is called The Keepers, and that's probably all I can say.
And that's it? That's just the title?
That's all I can probably do.
And the title might even change yet.
So. The title might change because, which we keep telling Netflix, there's a documentary called The Keepers, which is about like a murder in a nunnery. That is definitely not this film. It's a big fun action adventure family film, very much like Pirates of the Caribbean meets Paddington. That's the pitch we usually do.
Interesting. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah. So look, it's about. I'll give you the quick pitch. It's about a secret society of zookeepers who are looking after all the world's extinct animals. So that's kind of the pitch there.
Right. That's really cool. That is really good.
It's like Harry Potter-esque behind the scenes of the world.
Called The Keepers. That's your quick pitch. Yeah. Sweet. Did you ever have to give that elevated pitch?
All the time. But then Impact were like, you have 24 hours, send through like a 6-page application about this one synopsis you have, and then about a month later they call me to say, hey, you've received this. I teamed up with a writing partner who we wrote the script together. We've been working on it since October last year. We submitted the first draft at the end of March, and then we're actually on the second draft right now. So the cool thing about the Impact Incubator program is you get teamed up with these people called shapers, who are like industry professionals who kind of work with you every second day. Like it would be in person if COVID didn't happen, but we Zoom with them every second day. We got teamed with this writing couple who are husband and wife called Michelle and Kieran Mulroney, who they wrote some incredible films like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Sherlock 2, Power Rangers, and they wrote that Justice League film that George Miller was going to direct.
Oh no, I don't know anything about that.
That never came to day. Yeah, they told us many stories about that film. Like it was 2 days from being shot, starting production, and Warner Brothers pulled the plug. And then George Miller came back and made Mad Max Fury Road. So it's just a big FU to Warner Brothers there.
Yep. Awesome.
Which he made with Warner Brothers.
Yeah, which he made with Warner Brothers, you know. So, but it's like they pulled the plug because they were worried about George's vision, and then he went and made Mad Max Fury Road.
And then they just had like a 6-year battle to try and get Furiosa made. Now that's getting made, and it's meant to be the biggest production in Australia's history.
Yeah, a number of our crew that just finished on this animated film have gone into the previs department on Furiosa, and I saw a few shots recently which looked so freaking cool.
Yeah. Awesome. It's awesome.
So you know people doing previs on Furiosa, which is a film I haven't even heard of, but I'm already excited about. No, that's awesome.
Oh, so it's Charlize Theron's character in Fury Road
Okay, so I'm just processing a couple of things.
Not Charlize Theron, younger Charlize Theron.
Yeah. Interesting. Sorry, I know you keep gesturing for me to get in the conversation. Well, I'm just loving listening.
Back and enjoying
I am. I'm being an audience member today, and it's great. I'm enjoying it so much. I did want to talk about timeline from film school to professional career. Did you say it was only 6 months?
So it was about 6 months I met Like a Photon. To be fair, I finished film school, and a lot of people was I'm going to go to Hollywood in a month's time, and that was my belief, and I was so excited about that. And then I fell down a few rabbit holes that you feel when you leave film school of low budget filmmakers in Brisbane and Queensland and Australia pitching you millions of projects and saying we're going to make you rich, and you're going to be a superstar, and then you finally get into the weeds of that project, and it takes you down a route of they actually have no money, or they're lying to me and stuff like that. So there's a lot of pitfalls, and it's the same experience I have with a lot of film school friends who were really pushing hard to make it in the industry. So I would say for a year out of film school, I got really lucky. The short film I made got picked with the Griffith selection at the Cannes Short Film Corner. So we went to Cannes Film Festival with a bunch of our cohort and got to travel to that festival, experience that. That was definitely the highlight of that year. But the majority of the rest of that year was a bit of a struggle for me, especially coming through high school, straight into film school, very driven, academia focused, and filmmaking's all I ever wanted to do with my life. And then to be outside of film school and be like, oh shit, I don't actually know what I want to do now or how I'm going to get a job, was pretty terrifying for someone who's had a set path their whole life. But then like a Photon came along. I worked in the writer's room of this balloon barnyard. I kind of just turned up every day, interned for 4 months unpaid, and then and look, to be fair, people ask me, was it worth it? And I say yes every single day, because one, you learn so many skills, and two, you make connections in the industry that now I'm working with who are broadcasters at Netflix or broadcasters at Stan, who were fledgling production assistants at other companies, you have no idea who the people you meet when they're early on, what they're going to become. So I think it was a bit of I thought it'd be such an easy trajectory to get the career I wanted. I looked at Spielberg's career my whole life and been he directed Jaws at 27 years old, his first directorial debut was 24, so it's quite terrifying to see that and have that kind of pressure on you. But if you work hard enough, it always falls into place, especially now. Brisbane is becoming a really, and Gold Coast and Sydney are becoming a huge hub of filmmaking. There's so many great production companies opening up, like Ludo, who are doing Bluey, and Robbie Hood, and lots of other great shows there. And there's lots of animation studios, and there's Hoodlum and Pixel Zoo and stuff like that. So I think it's a great time to be coming through film school and out into the industry, because everyone's really interested to kind of get new fresh talent.
It just might be worth having a plan.
It's worth having a plan.
Film school,
I think so. I think I find that people that choose a niche are more hireable than people who are I can do everything.
Right.
Good to know.
Yeah, I think especially as a producer though, you need to be able to do Photoshop, do a bit of Premiere Pro, have those kind of skill bases, because then the people who are hiring you don't have to hire someone else, and you're like a Swiss Army knife of different skills. A director, I went through film school, so my first year short, in first year, I worked with a director, and we've worked on the project every single year for the past 10 years.
Wow.
He was the director of these animated feature films while I produced or co-produced. And it was just it's just surreal really to meet someone in 2012 as a first year student, and now we're working together at a premiere of a Universal film, it's really cool.
That's pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
I had a point and I lost it immediately. I was thinking about that, I'm like, no, it's gone. You got anything?
I think I was going to talk about so as someone who's actually working in the industry, has been working in the industry for a few years now, what's the shift been like with all these American films having to be exported over here due to COVID stuff? What effect is that having on Australian films? Yeah,
it's a great question. I think, for one, it's very good for crews. For people who want to be standard crew people, in the art department, camera department, they are up to the nines with work. I've been down to the set for 13 Lives a few times, which is Ron Howard shooting on the Gold Coast, and everyone I went through film school is on that set, whether they're above me or below me in years.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's so good to hear.
It was like a family reunion, going to that set and being like, hey, how are you, man? How are you doing? It was really cool to see that many people employed. Screen Queensland are doing an amazing job too. They set up their own studios, which is something they've been doing for the past 20 years. Yep. So the Young Rock just went through their series, and now they're doing that Joe Exotic series there now. Some big films last year too, like Love and Monsters went through their studios. So they're just bringing so much productions here, which is great for crews. In regards to producers and directors and people who create their own IP and projects, I am worried about the future, just because there's this kind of Hail Mary focus on bringing these US productions. Which means no one owns the IP of those. You just pay per play crew members, and it's injecting a lot of money and a lot of jobs, which politicians love to be look, the industry's successful. But the Liberal government currently doesn't really put that much money into tax rebates or actual funding into projects. Screen Queensland do, and Screen Australia definitely do. They're working hard against the Liberal government who want to cut a lot of funding from the arts. So I think my tip there is really form good friendships with Screen Queensland, so that when that government and politician turn realizes how much the arts make, you'll be on the front foot to get development funding with Screen Queensland. For once you leave film school too, and this will be a good tip for you guys, Screen Queensland do this thing called ideas funding, which is development funding, which you can pitch a project to them and they can give you up to 10 grand to create a pitch bible or shoot a short teaser for your project or write a script.
We've actually just done an assessment about that where we had to create a pitch for that, like a pitch to possibly submit to them to try and get to generate funding for it.
It's something I never had leaving film school because it was like there was no early career filmmakers. There was no money there. It was always like upper tier mid to like experienced career. And I feel like and Screen Queensland have realised a lot of filmmakers coming out of film school are the hungriest and have the best ideas. So that's kind of like really smart of them to invest in that young talent in an early career stage.
Yeah, well, I think Carmelo and I both have ideas. We would like to jump at that
for sure.
Once we get out.
Good.
More on that later. Stay tuned.
But I think for now, I think we might call it there and just go back through all the things you're working on at the moment and plug them for the camera, if that's all right.
Okay, fantastic. Do I look into the camera?
You can look into the camera. Hello, everyone.
So like I mentioned, I'm finishing my second draft of a Netflix film called The Keepers now. Hopefully that goes into production soon. Yeah. It's really in the hands of the Netflix gods.
Yes.
I'm working on co-writing an animated feature film at the moment called The Sloth Life, which is about a family of sloths who own their own food truck, and they travel to the big city to try and make a better business for themselves. So that's one I've been loving. I've been watching a lot of sloth videos lately, which has been great. Nice. And then I'm about to start as a sole producer on an animated feature film for Universal called Combat Wombat 2, which is a sequel to our film Combat Wombat.
So yeah, Daisy Quokka, Combat Wombat, and 13 Lives as well.
13 Lives, I was working on set with that just because through the Impact program I got invited to be on set for that.
Oh, just invited to be on set.
Yeah,
okay.
So just to see how the filmmaking process is going. Yep. Look, it's going to be an amazing film. It's got an amazing cast like Viggo Mortensen and Colin Farrell and Joel Edgerton. It's all about the soccer team in Thailand that got stuck in the cave and got rescued. Read the script. It's a phenomenal script written by the screenwriter of Gladiator.
Right.
So it's going to be a great film. Yeah. Should be coming out, I'd say, probably next year sometime.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for that as well as The Keepers, and we'll stay tuned to Netflix. I'm sure all of our audience members enjoy the Netflix content. So to know someone who has produced and wrote some Netflix content, that's pretty amazing.
Thanks,
so
man.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a really insightful, incredible conversation. I hope you feel the same way, and I hope our audience has enjoyed it as well. Carmelo, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Bryce. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been great to listen, mostly.
But yeah, I think that's all for today. This has been the Film School Chronicle, and we'll see you next time.